In a move extremely reminiscent of the infamous Willie Horton ad of the presidential election of 1988, this ad is going to be run by Republicans against State Senator Brad Ashford. Take a look.
4 murders in 11 days. A judge decides Nikko Jenkins is responsible for all of them.
Nikko Jenkins was released from prison early after serving only half his sentence. The head of the Omaha Police Union said Jenkins is the poster child for why the good time law is a farce. Brad Ashford supported the good time law and still defends it, allowing criminals like Nikko Jenkins to be released early. The National Republican Congressional Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So Brad Ashford is running against Representative Lee Terry, a Republican, for a congressional seat. And so that ad is going to be run against him. We're going to show you the Willie Horton ad in just a little bit. But, I mean, you're going to see it couldn't look more like that ad.
All right, so anytime that first of all, we should not give time off for good behavior at all, which is to incentivize people to not riot in prison, for example.
Kill guards.
It's actually for the benefit mainly of the wardens, the prison guards, etc., right? So apparently that's out. You can't do that ever again, right? Anybody who agrees to do that is going to get an ad like this, say, oh, you let him out early. Second of all, okay, they're calling it the good time law. Like as if like Ashford's having a good time with Jenkins. Like, come on, let's have a good time with him. No, it's time off for good behavior, right? Which is what almost all of the prisons want. The prisons, not the prisoners. The people running the prisons want this system. But, and okay, so are we, and by the way, are we allowed to release anyone from prison? Ever. Ever. Because, oh, you were in there for smoking pot or whatever it was. Well, if you get out and you commit a heinous crime, that's theoretically possible with anybody, right? Even if it was a jaywalker, it's possible that he might kill someone the next day. They let Chris Jenkins out of jail after he jaywalked. Of course, they're not going to put the jaywalking, whatever it is. You apparently, that's it. Now, every sentence is a life sentence because if you let anyone out of prison, they're going to run an ad saying, you let him out of prison because you wanted to have a good time with him.
In that ad, it said that guy killed 4 people. Mm-hmm. And he got out of jail. He still looks like he's under 30 years old. How do you?
That's the part I don't understand.
No. He killed the 4 people within weeks of being released from prison
for
the assault conviction.
So that's very, very important, right?
Okay, so that's. I thought he killed 4 people and he did like 7 years.
It was just an assault conviction. Now, assault is bad, but it was an assault conviction. Now, here's the thing. If they did an ad that was intellectually honest or in any way honest and said, hey, you know what, Ashford is in favor of prison sentences for assault that are not long enough. Okay, that's a legitimate conversation. You can have a conversation, should that be a 1-year sentence, a 5-year sentence, a 10-year sentence? Like, we can have that conversation. But this is not about that. This is not, okay, how long do we want this? Do you think that if somebody goes in for assault, simple assault, that they should stay in prison the rest of their life? Nobody thinks that, right? Well, then you can have an ad run against you saying, Jenkins got out of jail after assault, and you agreed with that. Because you didn't give him a life sentence.
And here are 2 veteran political observers, Jimmy and myself. I also saw that ad and thought that he had already somehow committed murder when he was let out on the good time. It's very misleading the way it presents it.
Yeah, well, every part of
and I don't
this,
think that's a mistake.
No. I don't either.
Yeah, and they try to imply that he had any hand in starting the law. The law has been the law in Nebraska for decades at this point. I mean, they did the same thing concerning Dukakis with Willie Horton. That law was signed into effect by a Republican governor, but they stick it on the Democrat Dukakis.
Are you kidding? How come I never do that either?
I had to wiki
I did know that.
So isn't that amazing?
And it had been around for almost 2 decades at that
I mean,
point.
if you were around during the Dukakis-Bush election, if you asked anybody, did Dukakis pass that law that led Willie Horton to go out? They would say yes. No, it was a Republican who passed it. Yeah. It's just that Dukakis didn't actively say, I hate that law. So they're like, Dukakis, you let Willie Horton go. So let's show them that ad to give you a sense of context here, because this is like to unfairly attack a candidate is now known as basically Willie Hortoning them, right? So here we are back again, unashamed, doing the same exact things. This was the original ad all those years ago.
Bush and Dukakis on crime. Bush supports the death penalty for first-degree murderers. Dukakis not only opposes the death penalty, he allowed first-degree murderers to have weekend passes from prison. One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times. Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend. Weekend prison passes. Dukakis on crime.
In other words, if you elect Dukakis, he will let black people rape your wife.
Yes.
And stab you.
And stab your little boy.
And we're right back in that soup. Okay, and so now in this election cycle, some Democrats have gotten criticism for ads that are too harsh. Like they showed a wheelchair for 3 seconds, right? Yeah. Are you kidding me? We're having a conversation about whether a wheelchair was shown in an ad when a guy got $10 million, the guy who's in the wheelchair, Greg Abbott, and then kicks down the ladder after him and doesn't want anybody else to get settlements. And that's an issue compared to this ad. Yeah. We're having that conversation. Well, I'm sure, though, the entire mainstream media is just aghast. And they've been talking about it 24/7, right? Because I know they did with Wendy Davis.
Chuck Todd said that this commercial disqualified him.
No,
he didn't.
Oh, no,
he didn't.
That was the one he didn't. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
that
right.
was,
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Look, it's obviously it bothers us because of what it says about the campaigns, and certainly I don't know that all the people who are funding this ad, who made the ad, genuinely believe in it, but a lot of them do. They think that if you can find one example of a law leading to a heinous outcome like the good time law, that you should shut it down. And it's that sort of simple thinking, I think, that has really fucked up our country. It's what's going to eventually shut down self-driving cars, because one person's going to get in an accident. Because the simple human mind can't fathom that, yeah, a person might die from a self-driving car, but 30,000 plus people already die from human driving cars. Like, if you come up with one example, that doesn't mean you shut down a whole program. It doesn't mean you shut down a whole experiment. I think it's just terrible for America.
Here's what bothers me about this. Cenk, since we've known each other for years, I am committed to the principle of teaching evolution and understanding science in the schools. And we trail the developed world in the understanding that evolution is a scientific principle. This ad, which is identical to an ad that ran 25 years ago or more, makes me question my own belief in evolution, because where the hell are we going as a society if this same shit works over and over and over? And by the way, I think their theme song is Hungry Like the Wolf, which was topping the charts in 1988, if I recall correctly. But it's just devastating to me. I mean, it really is upsetting to think that we've learned nothing. In a quarter of a century.
But the graphics are much better now, so we have evolved.
There's that. There is
so
that.
There's evolution after all. My last thought on this is Democrats should take the gloves off. So if I'm Ashford and this ad ran against me, I'm like, up and at 'em, guys. Here's the ad we're going to run, okay? U.S. Representative Lee Terry blocked the Surgeon General from being in office. We now have Ebola in the country, and we have no Surgeon General. We have no general to lead us when Ebola has come into the country. Who made that happen? Goddamn Lee Terry. He terrorized your kids. Your kids might all die from Ebola because Lee Terry wouldn't allow a Surgeon General because of politics. Can you believe this? God damn Lee Terry and his Ebola spreading ways.
Lee Terry hopes your kid gets Ebola. That's what you say.
We could make that ad.